a real cool time tonight. I say we will have a real cool time tonight.
Hello, I'm Cone from Some 41. This is my show called Cone's Cave right here on Adobe Radio. This is season 4, episode 4. And I have a great one. I have Spike Slawson, lead singer of Me First and the Gimmes. It is a good one this week. Spike also plays in Re-Volts. He has played in the Swingin Utters, many bands throughout his life. And there's so much to talk about with Spike, and this is a longer than normal episode, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to get right into the conversation with Spike right after this. All right, this is Cone's Cave, and I'm Cone from Some 41. This is my show right here on Adobe Radio. This week, I have Spike Slawson, who is the lead singer for Me First and the Gimmes. Most people by now know Me First and the Gimmes, but if you don't, they are a punk rock cover band. They take great songs and make them into great punk rock songs. That's what they do best. Spike and Me First and the Gimmes just released a brand new album entitled Blow It at Madison's Quinceañera, out now. Go check it out. Spike is also doing punk rock museum tours in Las Vegas, October 11th to the 13th. So if you're in Vegas around that time, go check out the Punk Rock Museum and get a tour from Spike himself. All right, let's just get right into the conversation. Here's my conversation with Spike Slawson of Me First and the Gimmes.
I actually was skimming through like articles of yours for the past 20 years or whatever, 25, 30 years. Was there something at a Pittsburgh Pirates game you guys got booed or something? What was that? What was that whole thing?
Yes.
What was that?
Due diligence that you've done. Yeah, man, I think that's commendable. Yes, so I forget when exactly it was, sometime in the aughts, and it's kind of like a slow moving bullet. You know what I mean? Because like we were hired to do it a year in advance, and a year in advance we're thinking, you know, I was thinking, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? Like and I was familiar with, you know, my band and the kind of crowds that would be sympathetic to us. And it just seemed like that's a weird idea, you know, like, and I had been to fireworks night at Three Rivers Stadium, not at PNC Park, but it was a year off, you know, so I could like not think about it. And then it's 9 months away, you know, like that's still plenty of time. And then I remember when it was about a month out, it started to get to feel kind of serious. And then I remember I you know, and I think it was kind of deliberate on Mike's part to like not rehearse, you know. I don't know if it was deliberate or if it was just, you know, we couldn't manage to get the time together. And the weird thing is that the Pirates organization, which hired us, and they hired us to play 3 nights, 3 fireworks nights, which is the most popular. Like at that time, Barry Bonds was gone. The Pirates weren't winning anything. And so the only games that got people in were like once a year fireworks nights, as they called them, Sky Blast. And it was pretty good, right? You can sort of hear that in like the Ron Burgundy voice. And then but they picked our songs for us, which we saw, all right, you know, like, and as it turned out, one of the songs they picked for us, unbeknownst to us, but beknownst to all the Pirates fans, was a Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, which, as it turned out, was a Boston Red Sox fight song, which we didn't know anything about that. And like, so the night before, we do this like weird dry run through, and they wheel us out on the stage, on the same stage that we're going to do the next day and night, and out to second base, which was well outside of projectile range, which ended up being a good thing. And I remember we would go through it, and what they would do was they would play a little bit of the original song and then have us play it. It was like the worst organized. See, I think that there was a dude on his way out of the Pirates organization, and this was his parting shot. Like, I think it was a contentious split. So hiring us was like his, like, I'll show them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to hire this goofy cover band from San Francisco to play. So we go through the run through, everything is done, and the Pittsburgh like union stagehand dudes, I remember one guy in particular, he just kind of stopped and there was this long pause and he looked at us and then he like kind of looked around and said, well, it is what it is, you know? And that was ominous and a little bit of foreshadowing. And then so the next night we watch the whole game. They beat the Atlanta Braves. Sitting in the stands, watching the game. We go down into the bowels of PNC Park. I had never been to PNC Park at this time. Been to Three Rivers, as I said, many times. But we get dressed. They make jerseys for us with our names on them and the iconic, you know, the Pittsburgh P. And we go out and we start, and I think we started with Stairway to Heaven, which is kind of like an irreverent version of it, you know, not meant to be an homage, but like sort of a satire of the original, if you will. And there was dead silence afterwards. Dead silent. 35,000 people. And then we go into Sweet Caroline, unbeknownst to us, but well known to the Pirates fans, that it was the Boston Red Sox fight song. So the booing then starts in like a couple corners of the stadium. And but all the while, there's like, they're not like M80s, they're like M500s going off from like all over the baseball field. They were actually going off of the old U.S. Steel building, off of barges out on the Allegheny River. Like the whole town turns into like one big fireworks night for this thing. And the booing started and then like continued and it grew in earnest to the point where I turned around and Dave on the drums was like, are they booing? And I said, yeah, I think they are. And I turned around and I looked at Mike and he had this like almost like hallucinogenic like smile on his face. Like, yeah, isn't it great? I'm not going to look at you for the rest of the day. Yeah, and then just the booing continued until there were, I would say, at least 30,000 people booing us at once, and it just continued. And then fireworks would just go off around us, and the booing. And you know, man, this is my hometown, man. So like, that's where I was bullied. That's where I got kicked off of the Little League team because my parents didn't know I needed glasses yet, and I was really coordinated anyway. And so this was just like this, it was like this really climactic Pittsburgh moment for me, which in hindsight, it was the best thing that could possibly have happened. I think I still have the newspaper article, and it says, yeah, punk band fails to score with Bucks fans at Sky Blast. And I think it was like right under, I think there was an intifada at the time in the Middle East and in Palestine and Israel. And this was literally like under, like right under that, maybe even over it. You know, like sports are such a big deal. Like, are the Steelers heading in the wrong direction? You know, Pittsburgh's just, when Steel left Pittsburgh, there wasn't a whole lot left but sports. Yeah. And as like meaningless and symbolic as sports seemed, it at least it was something, I guess, you know. And but I think that was also like part of the rationale of people booing. Like, man, like you can't even win games, and you're hiring this stupid ass band that like, and we hadn't practiced in a year. You know what I mean? We're not in we like not bringing our A game, I would say, but in hindsight, like it was pretty legendary amongst my friends. You know, like had they cheered us, I think that would have done much more damage to our credibility if like a bunch of like, you know, yokels from, because it's not, there's Pittsburghers there obviously, but it's a lot of people from this thing. Like Pennsylvania is like in Pittsburgh, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a weird city. You could drive around what is essentially like, it's a small city, but it's a city. And then you take one turn because of the topography, it's like mountains. It's either the mouth or the ass of the Appalachians, depending on your perspective. And it's like you'll find a holler, you know what I mean? Like in Kentucky or something like that. You like in the middle of the city, and there's people that don't want to be found, like weird bikers and like Texas Chainsaw Massacre like style hillbillies. It's not like Philly, you know what I mean? Like Pittsburgh is like, somebody from there described it, best description I ever heard is like if you took the Bronx and Kentucky and smashed them together, and that's exactly what it is. Which is, you know, and it's unlike anywhere I've ever been in the world. Like I obviously have mixed feelings about it. I don't live there anymore, but and then that was another, like, prior to that, to the fireworks night, I used to have just like vertigo inducing nostalgia for the place. You know, like if you grew up in a place and then you don't live there and you don't get to visit there as often as you'd like. And I just, the smells, certain blocks in the neighborhood that I grew up in, you know, like the tree line, the brick, everything is brick, like the smell of frying food, all that stuff. But I gotta say, like fireworks night tempered my nostalgia a little bit, which was good. Made it honestly a little bit easier to live 3,000 miles away, and I still get to go back, you know, once every couple years. So, you know, it's good.
What was your?
Not too far. Where are you at? Are you in Ontario?
Toronto. I was very close to Pittsburgh.
Yes.
What was kind of like when you grew up there? What was kind of like the punk scene like? Like what did you have like a day or like a moment in your life where you discovered punk for the first time, or you saw a show or you saw a band and it kind of changed your life a little bit?
Yeah. So my friend that I went to high school with, his name, and this is prior to high school. This was back in middle school, I think at like, which is 6 through 8, and grade 6 through 8, that is. And he had weird tastes, man. He was into King Crimson and Brian Eno, you know, and kind of this like 60s into the 70s prog rock stuff. But then he also dug the Dead Kennedys, and he turned me on to the Dead Kennedys. So we would listen to it. And then another friend of mine who came to Pittsburgh, of all places, from El Salvador. His mom moved him to Pittsburgh. I don't get it, but lucky for me, because he wound up being, you know, my best friend, and we still hang out because he lives in San Diego. But he had been going to shows for like a year or maybe more, and finally convinced me to go to this place called the Electric Banana, which it's like a weird, like, when I was going, I remember thinking it was like a punk honky tonk. Like the front was on the ground because it's all hills and hollers and shit. So the front door was on the ground level, and then the back where the stage was, it just wasn't that big of a place, was over, like, it was on stilts on sort of like a cliff mountainside, like just this precipitous drop. Huh. And there were steps that went down by it, and like it's been more developed since then, you know, just because as with Pittsburgh and as with a lot of other cities. But at this time, it kind of seemed like a lot of punk clubs, I imagine at the time, just kind of like the edge of the city, like kind of like no man's land, kind of forgotten about space. And the story went that the owner of the Electric Banana, he went to jail and didn't talk about the Pittsburgh mob. And so as a reward, he got a go-go dancing club, like a go-go club called the Electric Banana, after, I think that's in a lyric from a Donovan song, but it's also like an evocative, you know, name. And one of the go-go dancers there, Judy, became his wife, Johnny and Judy Zara, Z-A-R-R-A, which they became known as Johnny and Judy Banana, because I think, as the story goes, Reed Paley from a band called The Five, and I want to say they were one of those like CMU bands, like a lot of the bands that started in Pittsburgh before anybody else did, like say in the late 70s. I guess they had probably heard bands from New York and Cleveland, and I think a lot of them were CMU students at the time. They convinced Johnny Banana to do punk shows, and then eventually all ages shows at the Electric Banana. And then the first show that I went to see was Black Flag, who were touring with Saccharine Trust at the time. And I think Des Cadena, who we're about to tour with, incredibly enough, he's going to be playing guitar with us. He had just quit like '83. And so it was Greg Ginn, it was Kira, I want to say it was Bill Stevenson and Henry on vocals. It was a Slip It In tour. And I remember because at the time, you know, this is pre-cell phones and internet. So like you had to send away for catalogs and mail order. And that was like kind of your first clue as to what this like worldwide network was all about, you know? And so with Black Flag and SST, it was Ray Pettibone's art that like, and it really like, it was disturbing on like, you know, very pre-verbal levels. I don't know if you're familiar with the Slip It In record.
Yeah.
That's the nun that looks like she's going down on the guy. Like, it's one of the most iconic images to me in my whole life. And I remember at 14 years old, just being so disturbed, but unable to turn away from that image. And then I remember loving the record, but then like discovering earlier Black Flag and loving that, you know, kind of even more. Like, I don't, like Henry, like he famously said, what did he say? Like, because he went off to do things that I didn't necessarily care for, you know what I'm saying? But like, what I did agree with was like his assertion that like the freedom to do it was more punk than sort of like ascribing rules based on one period in time, man. Like, because it's a weird like I understand why people do it. But like to call something punk in 2024 to me, like it's loaded because like the name itself. So the progenitors of the like so-called movement. Well, it is a movement. It is a fucking movement. But the progenitors weren't using the word punk, right? You know what I mean? They didn't have a word for it. They were just doing what was, you know, like appealing to their intellect and their, you know, and they wanted to, I don't know, like make weird music and have sex in the bathroom, you know what I mean? And like, and change the world with their style and music and image propulsion. Like they weren't anti-celebrity. They wanted to like use celebrity apparatus for their own ends, which I have a lot of respect for. So, but like the idea of calling things punk when it's like if you're talking about England, very specific circumstances, like Margaret Thatcher, although she might have, I forget when she went into office, but garbage strikes, like there was like a weird specific set of circumstances. And then New York, say in like the mid 70s, like this hellscape, like you see pictures of it, impossible to imagine now. But so like also the fact that there are like these kind of steadfast rules about it is that also seems kind of square and makes people seem like, man, you're just kind of like less colorful deadheads, man. Like what, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like, but and anyway, that is to say that I really dug slipping in at that time. But I remember like thinking, and I think it is rooted in a specific period of time, because when you listen to Black Flag, like in the early 80s stuff, the very early 80s, with Dez singing or with Keith Morris, and then Damaged with Henry Rollins, it's like, it's weird. Like that's rebel music, you know, like they didn't play as sophisticated as Slip It In because they didn't necessarily know how to. There's just like a scream, like a cry from the gutter, you know what I mean? Like from the underground, liberation music, like the way jazz, like I don't listen to Bitches Brew really by Miles Davis, but I love like the early stuff because it just sounds like, and this is obviously like, you got to include the context, everything you know about it and everything you know about the time period. But it sounds like liberation music to me. And I remember listening like the early Black Flag stuff and a lot of the early punk stuff. It just sounded like liberation music, sort of like rebel music, but like punk was inherently political. I don't think like until like bands like Crass, I don't feel like you had anything like Johnny Rotten was more like Dada or something, or surrealist poetry or so, you know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't like, I'm sure he had things that he wanted you to think about, but he wasn't quite directing you there. Now I've heard that he's like a Trumper, you know what I mean? Like it's just, you know,
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Which I guess kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, I always looked at the Clash as kind of political, and the Dead Kennedys, obviously.
Absolutely. And if you watch, there's that Don Letts movie that I've watched at least parts of. And in fact, I want to say I was up in Montreal, and he was being interviewed, and he posits that the cultural genesis for the English punk movement was white kids and Caribbean kids in towns like London finding common cause, like these sort of like, I mean, I guess some people called them riots, and then other people called them like street parties, you know, and everybody got together, and there was this weird sort of like cross-cultural action going on, and sort of like a scene. And then if you listen, like, because apparently Don Letts DJ'd a lot of those like very early punk shows, and the sound was reggae. Like it wasn't, because there weren't punk records yet, so they like, so Homeboy just played reggae songs. And to me, like I don't know, I like that, the idea that if punk bands are playing, like there's something completely different playing over the PA in between. I also like more like diverse bills, like to see comedians or like singer-songwriters, or I think that's like European festivals, you know, they really got that down like a long time ago. Like they Mission Ready was a very punk festival, but a lot of festivals out there, like there's every different kind of band.
Oh yeah.
You know, and sometimes you get shunted onto like a punk stage or something like that, where it's all punk bands, but a lot of the time it's just it doesn't matter. And so you get everybody from the region comes to see like the Insane Clown Posse and, you know, everybody else, like Agnostic Front, you know, like it's, which is, and it's more interesting and it exposes more people to, which, I mean, we gotta face it, like it's just it's just a notch on the dial right now, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and you know, everybody is trying to get their ideas out through music, no matter what kind of music it is. But punk, now that it's, for better or worse, now that it's become, you know, sort of mainstream, it is just a notch on the dial. So like, if that is the case, then the European festival, like the way they do it, it's perfect. Like, and to me, that's an important thing for like, sort of like, what do you call them, man, like orthodox punkers, to remember that, like, man, you're just a blip in the bigger timeline of like rock and roll music, or like pop music, if you want to do an even bigger timeline. Like it's just, that's all it is, you know, which is a lot. Like, because they like the like the Ramones and all these early punk groups, before there was even the word punk, like they were trying to bring back, I think that was, a lot of them say that it was their answer to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Like they felt that rock and roll had lost its way, like, and like prog rock was just not moving them. It wasn't making the girls dance. And so they wanted to go back to like Dwayne Eddy and Carl Perkins, you know what I'm saying? Like to raw rock and roll.
Totally. Yeah, you know, it's interesting about the word punk too, because I don't know if you've seen this interview before, but I watched this old Iggy Pop interview from, I want to say, probably the late 70s, maybe early 80s, but he was going on about how he despised the word punk and how it was for people that like were no good people. I don't know if you've seen that interview.
He said it's for dilettantes, which is like, I love that word, and third-rate journalists.
That's it.
Tell me about punk rock, because I've read all kinds of reviews. I'll tell you about punk rock. Punk rock is a word used by dilettantes and heartless manipulators about music that takes up the energies and the bodies and the hearts and the souls and the time and the minds of young men who give what they have to it and give everything they have to it. And it's a term that's based on contempt. It's a term that's based in fashion, style, elitism, Satanism, and everything that's rotten about rock and roll. What I can't figure is whether you're acting against that label. You don't like the label.
I'm not acting.
No, I know. Reacting against the label then. Responding angrily to the label. You don't like the label. Is that right?
I don't like to hear it come out of someone's mouth.
Okay. Where do you like to hear it come out of?
I remember that there's that interview, and then there's the one where he goes on Tom Snyder and what does he say? Like, he starts going into the different Greek schools of art, and he's so high that it's like his eyes are super pinned.
Yeah.
And the whole time he's like holding up a wine glass. Every time he sees that the camera's on him, you know, he's like trying to, and I think he had a chipped tooth, and I don't know if he chipped it during the performance because he's got a little bit of blood like coming down. And Tom Snyder is just this kind of like Midwestern guy. He had sideburns because it was the 70s. And I think he starts off saying something about like, you know, we're talking about your act. We're gonna, and then Iggy just immediately, it's not an act, and just stares at him. And there's this long pause. Okay. So, and then Iggy, and he's got this beautiful Michigander accent when he does it. and he says, you see, well, there were two different schools of art. There was, I forget, the Apollonian school and the Dionysic school of art, and like one was more theater and one was more like static. Anyway, that's a great fucking interview, man. That's one of my favorite interview moments.
I can go down a huge rabbit hole watching old Iggy interviews. Oh my God, it's like it's
yes. Yeah, and he seemed kind of crazy, and he was kind of cut too, because I think like he had has a spinal, some kind of scoliosis kind of thing going on, so he had to like start like lifting and working out from an early age. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't fuck with the dude, and he looked like kind of high and unpredictable too at times. Yeah. Like, man, there's a video of him, and I don't know if he's just mouthing the words, like lip syncing, because it's just him, and it's a studio audience, and I can't tell if it's in Germany where it is, and I don't even remember what song he does, and he's like getting in people's faces, and like he looked like kind of he was probably a dude for the 70s,
I think he was lip syncing that. It was on TV. I think he was lip syncing it. It might have been I'm Bored, but it was something like maybe I'm Bored. But yeah, he wasn't allowed to sing, I guess. So he just danced around. Is that the one? He was like in yellow pants or something, like shiny pants.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. There's the one where he's got the horse tail on too. That's a good one. But I think he's doing the passenger in that one or something like that.
There's something I wanted to ask you about this, because I just had Fat Mike on my show not too long ago, and you mentioned mail order things before. So you used to work for Fat Records. So I want to kind of
yes, I did, but I
want to kind of get like your feeling of how it was to work for Fat Mike in the
a better question would be to ask him how it was to have me, like man, I gotta, like, half of the reason that I got asked to join his cover band idea, I think, was because I was performing so poorly at the shipping and receiving job. Like, I sent a package of like merchandise, which, like, how much people are counting on that, to the wrong continent. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there were just sort of, I'm not proud of it by any means, but I think it was more my performance that was the thing that was kind of wanting in that case. As far as an employer, I don't know. Did he pay me great at the time? You know what I mean? No, not great. I guess not. Not the worst that I've ever been paid. San Francisco was a lot less expensive at the time. It still seemed like the kind of place where, and this would be for a very short time, because I started working there like 95 or 96 or something like that. And San Francisco for a couple years would still be somewhat affordable. Like, if you had roommates, you could have like a pizza job or something like that, and kind of make it, and you'd still have time to play music with friends and go get drunk, and which like I would go to work. I remember one time somebody asked me, like, God, like, Spike, are you hungover today or something? I was like, not yet. I feel like it's so, and I don't drink anymore, for a number of reasons, but and I haven't for a long time. But yeah, no, I'd say that's probably a better question for Mike and or Aaron.
Was it?
Because
didn't the
it's almost as if he invented a role for me in a cover band to just so that I could do less damage to his business.
Wasn't there? I thought there was like some kind of song, like the Aquabats did a song about you complimenting your work ethic.
I mean, like, I'm not afraid of hard work. I grew up in Pittsburgh, but I mean, like I said, like, I wasn't born there, and I think like if you came from a certain part of town in Pittsburgh, you could smell on me that like I didn't have their problems or I wasn't gonna have their problems. So they were gonna give me some problems to think about, you know what I mean? But being adjacent to like problematic, struggling people and communities, like it made me reflexively pro-union. And it also gave like, I don't know, man. I live with Italian American, so like everybody's lazy to them. You know what I mean? I admit that I'm lazy, but when I'm working, I'm working. You know what I mean? Like I have a fraction of the Pittsburgh work ethic rubbed off on me.
Yeah, totally.
So
I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to talk about the new album. But first, I want to talk about like the punk rock museum tours. So for your tours, I don't know if you've done them before, but are you like, do you have to go and like brush up on punk history, or is it just stuff that you've grown up on and you can walk through and have stories about that? Like, do you prepare for these tours, or you just kind of make it fun?
So I did like a weird. I had been there before, so I've done them once. I've done like a set, like a weekend of tours, and I had been to the museum prior to that. I think like right after it had opened, or maybe even like right before it had opened, and so I kind of was somewhat familiar with especially like the sort of the beginning of the tour, so to speak, like but I did a run through like immediately prior and talked to people like Mona, like me, Lisa Brownlee about some of the and Mike about some of the stuff, because there was like how he had acquired some of the stuff is like a story in and of itself. Like,
yeah,
like he's known enough that like he can call people and they'll answer the phone, you know, and like he'll get these weird, like the Germs video from Up in Smoke. And I forget what the guy's name was, but the guy didn't want, and the guy, like, he didn't want money for it, but he didn't want anybody else to make money for it. So it's this really weird thing, like he didn't, and so acquiring that video took, because it's not in the movie, it's not in Up in Smoke. You can see Darby crash in the crowd in Up in Smoke, but you can't see there because everybody said it like they were too horrible to make the cut. Like the Dills, who are like an old SF, I think sometimes LA band, they were in there. I forget who else was in there, but like, you can see Darby crash in the crowd, maybe Pat Smear too. And Pat Smear had this weird like poodle haircut at the time too. It was pretty fucking, see what I mean? Like they hadn't codified the look yet. So it's like, I don't know. It's way more interesting to me. They're like something like the mid-late 70s version of like Ravers or something like that, you know, like, but that, for example, like the story behind just acquiring that was interesting. So like they filled in a bunch of blanks, but a lot of the trivia around especially like the early punk scene and then the stuff prior to that, like the Velvet Underground and the MC5, Stooges, stuff like that. It was just this trivia that I just naturally wanted to know, you know, or would just like, and then man, with phones now, you can just sort of, you know, look everything up, the world of information and misinformation at your fingertips. So yeah, and then with other instances, like with some of the Gilman stuff, like I was lucky enough. So when I first left Pittsburgh, moved to Davis, California, which is close to Sacramento, and I would come down to here to San Francisco every once in a while. A couple of times, those shows were scary, and to this place called The Farm. I never did manage to make it to the Mabuhay Gardens or on Broadway, even though I think they were still open at that time. And they're still there, like the buildings and like the marquees are still there on Broadway. The on Broadway and the Mabuhay Garden, they're like upstairs and downstairs from one another. But I went to this place called The Farm, and it was dangerous outside. It was dangerous inside. It was just a weird, like a lot of places, I guess, at the time, especially out here in California, like just like shows in the 80s got really violent. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's really cool, man. It's all art. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I remember that used to be like a derisive term, like from punkers. Oh, it's like art music, or it's very style conscious. Like, motherfucker, you using style, or even like your lack of style, stylistic choice. You know, like it's but I do remember it being very violent at the time. It was violent in Pittsburgh, but I knew a lot of the people, for better or more for worse. But no, it's just you see shit you don't want to, you know, like it's you come to realize, man, is this really an alternative to like outside to mainstream life, or is it just like a more intensified like version, like Lord of the Flies or something like that?
Yeah, totally.
But I went to Gilman Street a bunch before it even had like a name, or like they were barely doing shows. Like I think they had a handful under their belt when I first went there, so I continued going there in the years that I lived in Davis, because Davis was a drag. Like Sacramento is your big town, you know, like that, like, you know, and I have love for Sacramento and people there and everything, but like that's, you know, and so I would come down to the East Bay or to San Francisco and go see shows, but I was able to like, you know, now in hindsight, there are all these like amazing bands that either ended up becoming huge or forming different huge bands. And I saw a lot of those groups like just playing in front of like a few hundred people. I remember, in fact, when Operation Ivy played a show at Gilman, that like when there was like it was packed all the way to the back of that room, and like you didn't know anybody, and that's when you know, like, man, goddamn. And then I forget if they had gone on like the North American tour or if they were about to, but they were really really popular at that time. And that was kind of an inkling of all, like Green Day would play there, like all these groups that would end up being like either huge or just legendary. And then even Gilman kind of became like a sort of provincial. I don't know how else to describe it, man. Like, even if I agree with your politics, like, I don't know, like maybe I don't agree enough for you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, and then like with the rules and shit, like I understand the rules with Nazis because like a bunch of my friends, God bless them, like fought back. Like they realized, hey man, there's more of us than there are of them. So when the skinheads came from San Francisco, like there's only one thing that we can do, you know, because there's only one language that they speak. It's interesting, like the parallels with today too, because, you know, like I think about that a lot, like freedom of speech versus like, do you feel unfree in Germany? Like you can't fly a swastika flag, like you can't buy an AR-15, you know what I mean? But like, do you feel unfree there in any kind of fucking way? You know what I'm saying? Like that, like it just feels to me like they're civilizing the discourse, and it's not perfect because just as with every European state, like the fox is in the hen house, man, or with here in the States, man, the fox is definitely in the hen house, man. But it makes me think of like when people talk about dealing with it democratically, like, yeah, okay, like I guess that's who we're supposed to be, but like I went to shows where you weren't going to convince people with words to stop what they were doing, to stop abusive behavior, you know? And I'm not good at violence, and I wasn't at a lot of those events where this shit was going down, but I have a lot of respect for the people that just like, man, you ever see that American Hardcore movie where Henry Rollins like doesn't want to fucking react to the big, tall, gnarly, like Huntington Beach dude or whatever he was.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to find the strength. It's like this real time, like, oh, it's crazy. It's like, it's really like moving to me because he eventually finally just starts to like, and he's really sloppy about it. Like, he's obviously not a boxer or anything like that, but he just starts to like it hits the dude a couple times and the dude backs off. And it's this beautiful moment where he finds the courage and then the world like somehow weighs in his favor, you know, like,
that long hair too, right?
Yeah. I don't know if he had long hair at that point. I think at that point he had short hair.
Did he?
And I got to imagine like the crowds, San Francisco was scary, but I got to imagine the crowds in Southern California at that time were fucking like terrifying, man. Like just big surfers, dude. Like guys that wake up at fucking 7 a.m. and fight the ocean. You know what I mean? Like it's, like, how do you deal with that? But that being said, I feel like Gilman, like over the years, kind of they maybe cloaked themselves, not in victimhood, but just that, man, the political stance and the insistence on like their way of thinking, even if it's my way of thinking, just didn't seem conducive to like free thought and free expression. That being said, like I still go there, you know. I saw the Zero Boys there. God, it was like 15 years ago. They were doing reunion shows, and I remember it was like kind of a throwback. Like there was like tons of people my age and older, and Gilman was packed out, and I had not seen it like that in a while.
What's the capacity?
They're like, I don't remember what the capacity there is. It's not that big.
150,
like 300 people, maybe, like maybe even that. Like, but there's like the kind of antechamber there too, you know, where they put like fanzines and stuff. I haven't been down there in a few years, but the East Bay to me, man, like it just got kind of like, it's a weird, and this is me talking from like San Francisco, which has also changed quite a bit and gotten very weird, but Berkeley got like very corporate and very collegiate and kind of boring to me. And then Oakland is that weird, like the new generation doesn't expect anything for their money. You know what I mean? Like it's still the hood. And I'm not saying that it should change from the hood, at least not like the way you like they think, not through like development and $1 million lofts or anything like that. But it's like, but that's what it is. $1 million lofts in the middle of the hood. I like, so there's a guitar shop there that we bring some of our shit to. And I remember talking to the guy there, and it was in West Oakland, in this place that like it's kind of contested space. Like it's the hood, but there's like artist compounds and, you know, and expensive like Victorian flats and then like straight up favelas of like homeless encampments, like right by there. And I remember talking to the dude at the guitar shop, like, hey man, like you know, this is not the Oakland that I remember, not the West Oakland that I remember. And he was like, man, so there was a shooting in the courtyard of that loft complex, and overnight you saw signs in the window saying $1 million go down to $850,000. I still couldn't afford it, but like that's like you don't usually see gentrification going that way. Like it's like that's one of those things that the powers that be don't allow. Like it's not supposed to slip. Like it's supposed to like either climb or plateau and then keep climbing. But yeah, the East Bay, it's a weird. Everything's weird.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh is gentrifying. Even like Berlin, we were just there, and
it's a lot.
I feel like it's the Anglophone influence is malign. I think maybe the Quebecois are right. Quebecois in the plural, I don't know. But the Anglophone thing, man, as soon as you let that in, you got $5 coffees, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like as soon as you hear English everywhere, which in Berlin now, you fucking hear it everywhere. Like now you're getting $5 fucking coffees. You're getting like rents are gonna start going up further than they were. But yeah, I guess it's a worldwide problem. But anyway, suffice it to say, long story short, I don't go to the East Bay that much. I have love for it, but this is Spike Slawson from Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and you are listening to Cone's Cave.
Yes, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. This is my show right here on Adobe Radio. You're listening to the conversation I'm having with Spike Slawson of Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. We're going to get right back into it, talk about some music, particularly their new album called Blow It at Madison's Quinceañera. Let's do it.
Let's quickly talk about that new album. I don't know, is this one really a live album, or did you just make it sound like a live album?
No, it's a live record. Like it was, so Johnny's Bar Mitzvah was a live record too. And that was, if not in execution and music, in concept was one of my favorite of our records because of the event, and the event itself was the theme. And I think, it's hard to imagine since like Napster and iTunes and Spotify, but let's just talk like if you're paying a certain amount of money per song, so you're able to parse a record for like the songs that you like and leave the rest. Fair enough, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get to fuck with other people's business models. You know what I mean? But whatever. Okay. And how they were able to do that, unfortunately, I believe, is that our business model as musicians became having 2 or 3 hit singles on a record, and then having the rest just sort of be like this kind of throwaway stuff, like good enough, you know what I mean? Like it, and to me, the point of a record is to transport you to a different world for 45 minutes or so. Yep. And you might not like every single song on the record, but every song kind of supports that premise. When you put the needle to wax until the time that you took it off, you're transported into a different place, into an event, which, and it was an event. 5 or 6 people get together and, they practice, they listen, and then they record and they make it how they want to hear it. And then that event resonates and snowballs through time. And the crucial part to me is that it gets interpreted and, more importantly, misinterpreted over the years or over time until that event achieves this kind of mythic resonance, which resembles in no way what it initially was, if that makes any sense, because nobody can actually put themselves there. So they're just kind of inferring and imagining and looking at the album art and just making these sort of connections, as specious as they may be. And I think like a cheat code to that is to actually play an event, because then it's an actual event. and you're hearing some of it, so you're getting some details, but a lot of it is just shit that you're making up about it in your own mind, and then it becomes something that's like that hopefully stands apart from the band, and just becomes something like an essential part of somebody's record collection. Yep. You know, even if they don't listen to it all the time, or even if it stays hidden away on a shelf somewhere, like it's something that they don't want to sell, or it's something that they treasure as like it took them to a different place. And it was an actual place, and it was an awkward place. Like, so I think that there's like humor, pathos, there's like tragedy, there are definitely like some really awkward moments. Like, it was touch and go at the beginning because not everybody was feeling the humor. Like, certainly not Madison's uncles, man. Like, they were kind of like, man, like, who is this fool? Like, I think that, at least to my trolling personality, that's a lot cooler and funnier than, say, Frampton Comes Alive, where it's just like, if they did anything, they would add and augment the applause. Whereas, like, for us, we want like 3 or 4 people like confused, clapping, like looking around, you know. Like, and then there's video of the event, which we're pouring over as we speak, and there's video of people like passing notes to one another on their phone and like rolling their eyes while we're playing, and that was perfect. It was exactly what we wanted on paper, like prior, and then in hindsight, no, it couldn't have gone better. But in the actual, like, in the moment, it was really kind of excruciating. And I didn't know at that point if we were going to be able to win people back. And then I thought to myself, dude, am I just some kind of like Jamie Kennedy thing going on right now, just like trolling this poor girl and her family on like one of the most important days of their lives? But we managed to kind of reel them back in. I gotta say, like, Madison herself was a really good sport, and her mom and dad were great. You can see them in the gatefold hanging out, having a good time. You can also see in the gatefold at the beginning, like, there's an empty dance floor, and there are people like at one point, people were just kind of leaving in droves, you know? And that was like, it doesn't matter if you planned for that and if you kind of wanted it, like, it's hard to persevere through something like that, you know?
All right, Madison, Little John, I want to know what your interests are. What's your favorite kind of music, for example? Do you like ranchero music? All right, I understand you're into cheerleading too, as well? All right, that's good to know. That's all I need to go from here. This next one is a cover. Lee, hold on a second. I think you're gonna dig this next one.
And there's a little snippet of the intro to Dancing Queen. They covered Dancing Queen on the new album. Check out the new album by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes entitled Blow It at Madison's Quinceañera. That's it for the conversation. I'll be right back. All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. Thanks for tuning in to my show right here on Adobe Radio. I'm here every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to thank my guest, Spike Slawson of Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, for coming on the show. Check out the new album titled Blow It at Madison's Quinceañera. And also, if you are in Las Vegas, October 11th through the 13th, Spike is doing punk rock museum tours. So you can book a tour with Spike. He'll take you around the great and somewhat new punk rock museum. I've been there. It's amazing. All right, I'm going to run. Until next Monday, I got to go.